And here with us now to dive a little deeper on this is senior fellow at the National Security Institute and former senior intelligence official Andrew Borene. Good to see you again. We talked over the weekend, and now here we are. We've got J.D. Vance heading home, leaving Switzerland. We just saw that in the last 20 minutes. Let's listen to another snippet from the vice president as he was departing Switzerland a short time ago, because he was asked about a particular moment with one of the Iranian negotiators over the weekend. Here's what he said.
There was a moment yesterday when Arachi came into the room and did not greet you. You guys did not shake hands, and then he walked out of the room. Did you feel snubbed by that? Did you feel it was an intentional move on their part? How did you interpret what happened?
No, I mean, I trust me, I've spent a lot of time dealing with the Iranians over the last few months. Sometimes I find them extremely confusing as negotiators. What I did find kind of funny is that after that initial meeting, there was this, sort of social media firestorm where everybody said the Iranians are going to leave, and then we proceeded to talk to them for like the next 9 hours. So I would just encourage the media, mistrust a little bit what you see coming out of Iranian social media.
Despite some reported tensions here, Vance says the talks in Switzerland are going well. So what do you make of what we're seeing so far? And look, to the vice president's point, I think everybody has to have kind of thick skin at this point with this.
Yeah, absolutely, Laura. And we talked about this over the weekend in the buildup to today's talks that, in my assessment, we were going to see some tit for tat from the Iranians. And undoubtedly, the United States has to maintain a credible threat against the clerical regime and the military leadership that if hostilities renew, the United States will maintain offensive readiness in such a way that the Iranians will do things like acquiesce to IAEA inspectors and opening the strait without tolls. And so, I think that was foreseen, that there will be, and there will continue to be some of this posturing, I would anticipate, whether it's in person or via social media between these parties as the negotiations continue over the next 50-some days.
Yeah, and talking about the situation in the Strait, it remains tenuous at best. President Trump is now threatening to take full control, he says, of the Strait, and saying that the U.S. could actually impose its own, quote, guardian angel toll system. So, given how this has all played out so far, is that a threat that Iran should take seriously? Is that something that could happen?
I think what I would say is we have seen this administration several times in the past year between Midnight Hammer and the beginning of Epic Fury undertake actions that many people thought wouldn't be undertaken. And so if I were to flip the table around and were an Iranian leader, I would take those threats seriously. Does that mean that they have to happen? No. And I think that what we're seeing is it's really critical, particularly as the United States Treasury has relieved some of the sanctions so that Iran can start taking money in, that some of those sticks in a carrot and stick mix probably have to stay on the table. I do think probably the biggest piece of news was this idea of a Lebanon deconfliction cell that would include Iran, Lebanon, and the United States. Because as we've discussed, I think the biggest wild card is Iran's ability or inability to control its terrorist proxies in Hezbollah and other groups like the Houthis or Hamas.
Right. And then you've got the U.S. Treasury Department authorizing the production, delivery, and sale of Iranian oil over at least the next 2 months. So they're given a timeline there. And we have imposed sanctions on Iran in some form or fashion since the 1979 revolution, going back in time here. So how big of a deal do you think that is?
Look, I think it's a big deal. I think that's what Iran needs is pathways to participate in the economy. Obviously they're struggling. They've lost military power, naval power, air defense power. They really are restricted to a pretty rudimentary set of drone and missile attacks and mining type behaviors that are not, large scale conventional military regional power. So I think what we will probably see in the next 50 days is a new order emerge should this memorandum become something more significant and lasting, particularly as it includes Pakistan and Qatar, and there are other regional powers that also have been the victims of Iranian terrorism or Iranian missile attacks, even just in the last several months.
And then we take a look at Israel's continued strikes on Hezbollah in Lebanon, as well as the fact that they are occupying part of the country. Is one of the major sticking points towards actual progress in these talks part of this? I mean, why are we not seeing Israel at the negotiating table with the U.S. and Iran? Some people say it could help. Other people say they should stay away. What do you think?
Well, look, I think it's important to look at the context. 47 years of this Iranian regime in the Islamic Republic, it is in their charter, death to Israel, death to America. The fact that they're negotiating with the Americans it does not mean that it would be super palatable or easy to bring together a country that they don't even recognize has a right to exist under international law. And so I think it's a delicate dance. Like I said, we're going to see some disparity between some of the social media messaging, some of the overt messaging from military powers, military leadership, as this thing transitions into kind of behind the scenes work by diplomats. And you heard the vice president say that a large number of the U.S. delegation was going to remain in Switzerland. And undoubtedly that means a large amount of the Iranian diplomatic delegation is remaining in Switzerland. So even as I think it is possible there will be exchange of gunfire, whether it's in Lebanon or in the Strait, over the next month and a half, 2 months, I do think that both sides want to see some stability. And I don't know that it's going to be a return to the status quo. I think it's going to be a different order when you talk about things like IAEA inspectors. And credible threat is going to have to be maintained, or that IAEA inspection is just paper. It's not happening in the real world.
All right. We're going to see where it goes from here. We've got this timeline in front of us. Andrew Borene, always good to see you. And we'll talk again soon, I'm sure. Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks, Laura.